to kill the line as fast as possible.
Yeah, your wire could be on fire right up to the fuse.
So you're talking directly from the power supply. In this case, it'd be 12 volt.
Yeah, it's got to be right.
Oh yeah, well I was thinking that would be fused anyway. You always fuse a negative and a positive off a battery.
And that's exactly what they're talking about. Yep.
Yeah.
So
even you could even fuse a negative because it could be return current.
Okay.
So, the other thing as well, fuses are installed for safety precaution. If you know a fuse or a circuit breaker keeps going, don't just keep resetting it. There's a problem.
Yeah.
I know lots of people. It's like, oh, the fuse keeps breaking out, so I just soldered some wire across there.
No.
You're like, no.
What'd you do? Houses with aluminum foil shoved in.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh jeez. Oh well. They're lost soon.
Or a copper penny.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Why would there be a switch in a high voltage power supply to turn off the power if its cabinet is open?
Oh, that's.
I love the safety questions. We're getting to the ones that are real easy.
That's to keep kids from
Number
getting
4.
Number 4, to keep anyone opening the cabinet from getting shocked by dangerous high voltage.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
So, if anyone around you opens the case of anything without physically disconnecting the power first, slap them.
Yeah.
Like computer case or anything, you don't know what inside could be directly connected to the power, and if you touch that, it's going to do damage. So,
Well, here's that point. When you are working on your radio, and you physically go down to the AC plug and you unplug it, there's still current in that capacitor. How long does it take before that will dissipate?
it depends. So if there's no bleed-off resistors or anything in the circuit, it could technically be in there for days, even years, but typically they'll build some circuitry in to pretty much dissipate them in a couple of seconds. So it all depends on the radio, how old it is, how much manufacturing tolerance there is. But for the most part, basic license doesn't allow you to modify your radio anyway, so you shouldn't really be opening up the case much. So
I was talking to somebody today that does some recycling, and we were talking about me taking the course and all that, and he's fried himself a couple times. I said, don't do that with the capacitors. And he goes in to snip stuff and take it
The
out.
worst ones is the photography flash. They're absolutely, they're like a bomb when they go up.
Oh, really, eh?
Yeah.
television flyback transformer as well, and the capacitor on that.
Well, the capacitor is really in the CRT, in the final anode of the picture tube, and the insulator is glass. It's perfect. We used to have picture tubes in storage that were used, and I remember picking one up that had been up there for months, and I picked it up and I threw it on the ground because I got a shock. Because the final anode, right where your hand was, right?
Oh, geez, yeah. Yep, so that's the long answer for capacitor safety.
Yeah.
How little electric current flowing through the human body can be fatal? All right, these questions, they're not really accurate. Just pick the smallest value every single time.
Oh, then we'll go to number 2.
As little as 20 milliamperes, yeah. So if you remember again, it's all about how much power is flowing through the human body, and it has a factor to do with how much resistance your skin is providing, how much voltage is on the line, and how much current is there, right? So it all comes back to Ohm's law. So the reason they're saying as little as 20 amperes on a really high voltage line on something like your tongue or wet skin or something, absolutely. But this can get even lower, right? It all depends on how much voltage current you have.
Yeah, it's 20 milliamps through the heart is supposed to get you.
Exactly. So,
You'd know all about that, wouldn't you, Bob?
yep. So that was the let me explain.
You get a junk, did you, Bob?
Which body organ can be fatally affected by very small amounts of electrical current? All right. Yeah, we just did that one. It operates on microamps of current developed through the nervous system, so tiny amounts of electricity through that can really set it off and stop your heart. So, what is the minimum voltage, which is usually dangerous to human? Just pick the smallest one again.
30.
Yep, 30 volts.
that
Just
one.
choose the smallest of these questions.
good one.
So, technically everybody could argue about what is the smallest they've ever heard. Which?
That's 30 volts in your tongue, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or through a cut or something. Yeah.
Yeah, a 9-volt battery across your tongue is giving people heart attacks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's in the internet.
So why would you
9
lick the
people a
battery?
year die from
Yeah, good
testing a
question.
9-volt battery.
Good question. Yeah.
So.
See, why would you lick the battery?
That's some.
Hey?
Oh, don't.
You've seen people do that?
Picking
No.
across a 9-volt.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Checking fuses.
All the
I've
time.
got a little Tesla at home with an alligator clip on it. I do the positive negative thing.
Fancy people.
Yeah, pull out your meter.
Yeah.
All right. So that was the coffee break.
Hey,
Moving on.
let's have the coffee break.
Yeah, I already had some. What should you do if you discover someone who is being burned by high voltage? tell them to stop.
I like two.
Number 2.
Number 2. From the areas who will be burned too. Your problem now, bud.
I like number 4.
Wait a few minutes to see if the person can get away from the high voltage on their own, then try to help them.
I like that one. Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm gonna go grab a coffee. Oh, you got this. All right. So we all know it's clearly turn off the power, then try to assist them in any way you can by calling for emergency help and providing first aid if necessary, and if you have the training.
This sounds like a fried buddy.
Yep. So always disconnect the power first, both when you're going to work on something and if you're trying to save somebody who's currently engaged with high power. And always never trust a switch. You may, for example, have some sort of switch on the device you can turn off. You can't guarantee that's an actual switch, that something hasn't disconnected in there. If it's disconnected from the power, the worst that can happen is you can touch a capacitor, right? So, what is the safest method to remove an unconscious person from contact with high voltage source?
Another 2x4.
Call an electrician.
Try one.
I dry 2x4. Yeah. I just like calling an electrician.
Oh yeah, it's good. If you got a blanket, you wrap them up. Yeah, absolutely. If you did.
So, it's turn off the high voltage source before removing them. Some people say you can hit somebody with something or use a blanket. Don't touch somebody who's currently engaged with high power, because now you're engaged with high power, and now we need to remove 2 idiots from a high power source as opposed to 1. So, turn off the power, then save them.
So voltage equals 2 idiots.
Basically, yeah.
And I just say
So-
make sure the power really is off, that you don't have a fused circuit or something.
Exactly. So, and the main problem is your first reaction if somebody touches something and they can't let go and they start falling unconscious, you're going to want to grab them. Don't do it. Your immediate reaction is going to lead to many more problems. Find the off switch, take care of it, because they may be dying, but you don't want 2 people dying. You can at least assist them. So, again, this is worst case scenario. You're probably not going to be working on thousands of volts anytime soon, but
Somebody's got to cover them with a blanket.
We work on 600 all the time.
yeah. So, if you have someone in contact with high voltage, you are now also in contact with high voltage. So, before checking a fault in a mains operated power supply unit, it would be safest to first,
Number 3.
Turn off the power.
turn off the power and remove the plug. So the second part is key. Without the power cable, there cannot be more power added to the unit. However, capacitors can still pack a nasty punch, so just be careful. Fault finding in a power supply of an amateur transmitter while the supply is operating is not recommended technique because of the risk of
Number 3.
electric shock. Yep. Overmodulation.
Don't get worried about that.
Yeah, E being slapped by a friend. So again, if you see a friend taking the cover off the transmitter and it's still plugged in, just what are you doing? For best protection from electrical shock, what should be grounded in an amateur station?
All station equipment. And the AC power line, more of it.
All station equipment.
Yeah.
Everything should be grounded.
Yeah.
Grounded to the earth, not to the wall socket. If you plug something into the wall socket and something shorts to the ground, now your case is shorted to the ground. Not so
That's
great.
something I was
so.
going to ask Bob, you know.
Oh, cool.
Where'd he go?
He's back there.
Is he?
Alrighty.
Hey Bob, can you use a grounding plate, which is 2 feet square, for grounding all equipment?
God. Well, you always ask the most of the complex answers. You got safety ground, you got RF ground, and you got lightning ground.
Yes.
They all have to be tied together. Okay? The RF plate, that 2 feet square thing, should have radials coming out from it, preferably buried, if you're going to use it as an RF ground, as a return path for a vertical antenna. But it also still has to be tied to the AC ground and to lightning ground, so that when lightning hits, they all rise and fall together, so that you don't get lightning out on one going through your receiver to the ground and burning your receiver up. Meanwhile.
Yeah.
Okay? So yeah, the 2 foot plate's fine, but you need more than that.
I was thinking, could you ground the antenna separately, like your main vertical antenna? Could you ground it separately, and then ground the station on another, say a 6 foot or an 8 foot ground rod?
Yeah, but they should be tied together.
They should be tied together.
Yeah.
Well,
Otherwise it'd come back up through, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Well,
that's for lightning. Because one part of the ground can be hit and not the other. And
You need to have a difference, yeah.
well, that leads me to the next question then. If your antenna is 200 feet away from your radio,
Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
yes,
Well, your coax going to the antenna is at ground potential. if you're using coax.
Okay, so then you have to have a splitter off the ground plate then to
Yeah, the real trick is that if you have a dipole with a coax attached to it and you don't have a balun on it, then the center lead of the coax goes to one half of the antenna. That's never grounded, you see?
Mhm.
So when you take it off for safety, you can ground it, or you can put a balun in there so that both sides are DC ground. That way, it's much safer.
this grounding is coming up. It's a
Oh, it's a pain.
If I could just tell you, I did mine just last year, and what I did is I went from where the meter goes on the box, I put a big terminal on there, and then I ran a heavy lead there to my grounding rod, and then into the house, and then into all the equipment. And as Bob said, tie them together.
It worked very nicely.
Yeah, and it worked great.
So okay, so I can continue on using my braided copper wire as ground then.
More is better, yep.
Yeah.
More
So I'll
rounds.
take that right off the meter, the 200 meter outdoor meter.
On that outside box is the way I did it.
Yeah. And then okay, very good. Yeah.
Alrighty. If a separate ground system is not possible for your amateur station, an alternative indoor grounding point could be
Metallic cold water pipe.
I like the last one.
metallic natural gas pipe. In the event of lightning strike, we tried. So a cold water pipe, of course. Usually these pipes are buried underground at some point, which means they're grounded. So, which of these materials is best for a ground rod driven into the earth?
Oh, I'll tell you, that's a good one. Copper clad steel.
Yeah, copper-clad steel. So copper is a great conductor, and steel is very strong. So that's why they're talking about the best, but an iron and steel rod would be a good contender if you have one lying around. If you ground your station equipped with a ground rod driven into the earth, what is the shortest length the rod should be?
Well, I thought the best was 8 foot, 2.5. So if the ground rod stations are driven into the earth, what is the shortest?
Well, they're going to say 4.
Yeah, they're going to say 4, but I thought 8 was the best.
Yeah. So they say 4. The station ground system must conform to applicable electrical code standards. The answer used to be 3 meters or 10 feet as the minimum, but Industry Canada has changed this since the provinces started to really change around what they said a good grounding rod should be. So that's why they now have the station ground system must conform to applicable electrical code requirement as the correct answer, because you should follow whatever the provinces is. Theoretically, your best bet is whatever's longest that you can afford, but don't need to get crazy with something 200 to 300 feet long.
I go up north, I have to use grounding plates because I can't get the grounding rod into the bedrock.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah, exactly. So it all depends on what you can do, right? Where should the green wire in a 3-wire AC line cord be connected in a power supply?
To the chassis.
Yeah, these are the questions that help you pass, because these, quite honestly, they're
Pretty easy.
stupid, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So it's to the chassis, right?
Yeah, these are the ones that get you over the 65.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, if your third floor amateur station is a ground wire, has a ground wire running 10 meters down to the ground rod, why might you get an RF burn if you touch the front panel of your HF transmitter?
Transceiver?
Transceiver, yes, sorry. You mean to read them out?
Yeah, I like number 3 because number 3 is relevant there. Number 3.
Acts more like an antenna than a ground connection. Yep, that's correct. So, yeah, try to keep your grounding short. As with every cable in radio, shorter is better.
Especially on higher frequencies.
Yes, yeah. And as you add more power as well. So, what is one good way to avoid stray RF energy in your amateur station?
To avoid stray RF.
Use a beryllium grounding wire for best connectivity.
I like that, making a couple of loops.
Make a couple loops in the ground wire or connects to your station.
Keep it short.
Keep it short.
Yeah, the shortness again, yeah.
Exactly.
And
So,
number 1, by the way, there is beryllium was used on a lot of finger feelers inside metal cabinets. And we found that stuff was absolutely poisonous.
Oh,
You
really?
had to cut yourself with a, yeah, we don't use that anymore.
Oh, hopefully, yeah. So there we go. If you find beryllium wires, be careful.
And those
Call
little-
Bob.
those little fingers in the boxes we used to shove the cabinet into
Okay.
the front panel in the box.
Yeah.
And feelers all around that made an absolute RF seal. The bad news for people.
Yeah. Great for RF, though.
Yeah.
All right. Which statement about station grounding is true? I don't know why they had to toss that in there, but.
Which statement about the station grounding is true? If the chassis station equipment is connected to a good conductor, there is no need to tie them to the ground. There's bullshit.
4. A ground loop is an effective way to ground station equipment.
Effective way to pick up RF.
Well, we're talking about grounding.
Yep.
So 4.
4? 3? Yeah.
3?
RF hotspots can occur in stations located above a ground floor if the equipment is grounded by a long ground wire. The above ground floor is kind of a red herring. The height of the station is less a factor than the length of the grounding wire.
So we're back to short wire again.
Exactly. So,
Well, okay,
I don't like that.
can you,
Sometimes you can't have a short wire.
yeah, well, if you've got a room on the second floor you want to use for that purpose.
If you got room on the second floor and you want to use 10 meters or something like that, and you've got a ground wire going out, you can buy antenna tuners now that you actually tune the ground wire. It doesn't even have to be physically connected to ground to the other end. It's just like having a ground 3 stories up, as far as the RF's concerned. Yeah, it's only in the last, say, 6 years.
Why would you tune it?
Tune the ground wire?
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're going to have mismatch, and you're going to have RF on your ground wire because it's.
You have to retune it every time you need a ground wire tuner.
Yeah.
If it's 10 times bigger, you got to retune it.
I've never seen an automatic one.
I think also the gauge of the wire. Heavy braided wire would certainly help.
probably, yeah.
Some higher.
You know, if your ground wire was long, and understand what I'm saying. If let's say it's 20 meters and you're going to the next floor, can you not put a secondary or mid ground on the ground plate on the second floor, and have the main ground cable connected to there, and then your station equipment connected to the plate?
Well, no, so because it would act as one long ground.
Yes, yeah, well,
So,
It would act as one long ground?
The
yeah.
grounding plate has to be underground.
Well,
It's still second floor.
yeah, I know, absolutely. But can you not use that?
No.
well, it's like for the entire system.
You already got a ground. It's
Yeah.
already on the ground. Where you got-
Well, the idea is to keep it, to get a good possible ground, it needs to be short.
It's not gonna be short if you're on the second floor. If your ground's there,
Yeah.
putting another one there is not gonna do anything. So if you do it separate.
All right, we'll leave it there.
Okay. On mains operated power supplies, the ground wire should be connected to the metal chassis of the power supply. This ensures, in case there is a fault in the power supply, that the chassis
Number 3.
does not become conductive to prevent electrical shock. So,
That's number 2.
yeah. I'm pretty sure they're wrong here, but it's technically also right. It doesn't develop higher voltage with respect to ground.
Number 4 is technically right. It becomes conductive to ground.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking.
Exactly.
yeah. I challenge that one.
I would too, but
Yeah,
That's-
but what they're saying is there's not a potential difference. It can't develop
high voltage difference to ground? I guess because now you got it double grounded, so.
because it's grounded, so it won't be.
To ensure that the homeowner ensure in case there is a fault in the power supply that the chassis develops a high voltage,
Not develop.
No.
That ground's correct.
does not develop high voltage with respect to the ground,
Yeah.
become conductive to electric. It's all about wording again, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's all
That's a
about
double
wording.
Q question because the last two are concerned with your safety.
Okay.
So you figure it's going to be one of those.
Yeah.
Well,
But it has nothing to do with your safety. It's specifically about the actual unit. Okay. So, yeah. But so now touching it shouldn't kill you. The purpose of using 3-wire power cord and plug on amateur radio equipment is to.
Internal shorts.
Sorry.
Internal short circuits. Short circuit.
Number 4.
Prevent the chassis from becoming alive.
Grounding, yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. Yeah, try not to use devices with only 2 power plugs these days. I don't know why they still make them, but it just means that they're not taking grounding into effect.
Why do people always cut the ground off the third on an extension cord?
yeah, they used to love me, used to run around cutting their plugs off.
Really?
I hate those people.
I guess a lot of the old places don't have the third plug-in.
Now, if somebody pulled the ground out,
Yeah.
they come along and I cut the whole plug off.
Yeah, that'd probably be the best thing to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's a good safety thing.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so.
Yeah.
Why should you ground all antennas and rotor cables when your amateur station is not in use? Has anyone experienced a rainstorm?
Number 4.
Exactly, to protect your station equipment and building from lightning damage. Perfect. Your antenna is shockingly good as a lightning rod. So, you want to install a lightning arrestor on your antenna transmitter line. Where should it be inserted?
As close to the grounding as possible.
Closest to the antenna.
I think of Benjamin Franklin,
Number 2.
right?
Yeah. So outside, close to the earth grounding as possible. So this is where you're trying to tie together the grounding for lightning strike and the grounding for the antenna together, so that during a lightning strike it doesn't go through the transmitter and back. But at the same time, it also needs to be outside because you don't want to ground lightning inside your house. Probably not the best bet. So
Alex, if I could just add to that,
Yeah.
if you really love your receiver and transmitter, unplug the antenna in the event of a lightning storm because that'll be toast otherwise.
So
exactly.
if you're going out for the day, just disconnect it.
Yeah, what I do is I leave my leads unplugged
Yeah.
and just for the 2 meter, then I just have a switch and I switch it off and it's grounded, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah,
But
there was
then
a- there was-
everything comes off and no lightning.
They were saying in the book there that the switches, the ground, they'll melt if you get a lightning strike.
I know, but it's better than nothing, isn't it?
Well, better than
leaving it
absolutely, because
connected.
it might not melt, it might work.
That's right.
Yeah.
Incidentally, Jeffrey, your antenna, the commercial one you've got, the 2 coils, it has a lightning protector built into the center insulator. There's no balun. And when it blows short. So when you hit it next time with the power, you're going
Oh.
a bit short. It's one of the features of that antenna.
So you blow your transmitter, right?
The thing is that when you get hit,
You know,
a direct
Jeffrey-
hit, everything just goes.
Oh,
yeah.
So forget it. Everything just toast.
So,
These guys here got so much.
here we go. Yep. How can amateur station equipment best be protected from lightning damage? Put it in a closet.
Best protected from lightning.
Number 3.
Yeah.
Disconnect all equipment from
Yeah.
power lines and antenna cables. Yeah. Who actually does, that's a different matter. So, power lines and antennas are the most likely entry point for lightning. So, what equipment should be worn when for working on antenna towers?
Fall protection.
A reflective vest of an approved color.
Hard at.
Light and yellow,
Which?
lots of lights.
Yeah, lots of lights, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there it goes. So, it's approved equipment in accordance with applicable standards concerning fall protection. As much as you can possibly scrounge out of the people who are paying you, so. Yep, a reflective vest does make you look professional, though, so it's a good choice.
Helps the EMS find you.
Oh, look at him go. Anyway, why should you wear approved fall rest equipment if you're working on an antenna tower?
Hold your tools up.
Yes.
I'd say number 3 maybe.
Number 3, to prevent you from accidentally falling. Yeah, that seems like the right answer. Just
Coffee break.
for safety, how high should you place a horizontal wire antenna?
Number 2.
High enough so that no one can touch it, any part of it from the ground. Yeah, that's correct. So the voltage on an antenna, it should not be played with. So don't let children or loved ones or even hated ones touch it. Not a good idea. Why should you wear a hard hat when you're on the ground helping someone work on an antenna tower?
If somebody falls down on top of you.
Number 2.
Number 2, to protect your head from something dropped on the from the tower? That is correct. So you won't be hurt should the tower accidentally fall.
You need more than a helmet.
Yeah. Though the helmet will inform people that you are working. That was one of the answers. Someone passing by will know that work is being done on the tower and stay away.
Yeah, that's one of the answers.
Shouldn't number 4 be a tinfoil hat?
To keep more energy away from your head during antenna testing, yeah. Actually, apparently, MIT studied that. Tinfoil hats increase conductivity, but only the aluminum ones were tested. They didn't actually test real tin, so we don't know whether or not it's actual tin or it's aluminum, but for now.
We'll call it tinny.
Which?
We'll call it tinny.
Yeah, tinny. Why should your outside antenna be high enough so that no one can touch it while you are transmitting?
It gets hot.
Number 3.
Yep, touching the antenna might cause RF burns. So, and don't play with an antenna in use. So, I probably should have put in use because that just says don't play with an antenna, which makes them sound like they're lethal or something. What safety precautions should you take before beginning repairs on an antenna?
Call Jeffrey.
How does Jeffrey feel about that?
Number 2.
Be sure to turn off the transmitter and disconnect the transmission line.
Absolutely.
So that you're not connected to normal power and you're not connected to lightning power. No cable, no power. What precaution should you take when installing a ground-mounted antenna? It should be installed in a wet area.
Well, that'd be good contact.
It might dry out otherwise.
Number 3.
It should be installed so that no one can come in contact with it.
Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty. Ideas on how? Fences? How would you keep people away from your vertically mounted antenna?
A fluorescent indicator. You can make a cover. You can cover it there. The fluorescent covers you can put on your ground wires.
Fair enough, yeah. So, anyway, it's a thought exercise for you guys. What should you do for safety when operating at UHF and microwave frequencies?
Number 1.
Keep antenna away from your eyes when RF is applied. Sounds right to me. Yep, makes sense. So, what should you do for safety if you put a UHF if you put up a UHF transmitting antenna?
Number 4.
Make sure the antenna will be placed where no one can get near it when you are transmitting. That's correct. This applies to all antennas though. So, what should you do for safety before removing the shielding on a UHF power amplifier?
Number 1.
Make sure the amplifier cannot accidentally be turned on. That sounds correct to me.
Octave drive.
Opening the case, again, disconnect the power or slap the person who's opening the case with the power connected. Why should you make sure the antenna of a handheld transceiver is not close to your head when transmitting?
Number 3. That's right.
To reduce your exposure to radio frequency energy. That is correct. You should, but whether or not you do, again, it's entirely a personal choice. How can exposure to a large amount of RF energy affect body tissue?
3.
It heats the tissue. Yep. So if it lowers blood pressure, though, I mean, that would be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
I gotta get some of that.
I've already got low blood pressure.
Oh, excellent.
Well, you need some volts then.
Give you zapped.
All right. Which body organ is most likely to be damaged from heating effects of RF radiation? Nice. Yeah. Eyes are like eggs. Heat really messes them up. So.
Poached.
Yep. If you operate your amateur station with indoor antennas, what precautions should you take when you're installing them?
Number 2.
Locate the antenna as far as possible away from living spaces that will be occupied when you are operating. Yeah. RF energy is exactly like light. A few watts can be fun, but too much and it starts getting hot and people may get blind. So, yeah. Why should directional high gain antennas be mounted higher than nearby structures? Four. So they will not direct RF energy towards people in nearby structures. Yeah. And so they get a good line of sight, of course. Yeah. So, the best part about this. Having it high up doesn't affect your usability. In fact, it increases it. So, in addition to complying with the Radio Communication Act and regulations, Canadian radio amateurs must also comply with the regulations of the
Number 1.
International Amateur Radio Union,
Number 2.
International Telecommunications Union. Yep. The ITU sets the rules that Industry Canada follows. So, which International Telecommunication Union region is Canada in?
2.
Ah, excellent. Australia, Japan, and Southeast Asia are in which?
4.
3. 3.
Everybody was positive it was 2, but it is 3. So,
mystery.
perfect. Yeah. The department that is responsible for the administration of the Radio Communication Act is
Industry Canada.
Industry Canada. The amateur radio service is defined in
It's under the Act. Yeah.
regulations.
Can I get those?
So if you remember the way law works, regulations define the hobby.
Right.
The Act gives the government the power to set the regulations.
Right.
So the government first passes an Act, which allows them to then produce regulations under the Act.
So they're regulating our hobby.
Exactly.
There you
So yeah, the Act governs the way the government can produce regulations. The regulations govern the way the amateurs can use radio. What must you do to notify your What must you do to notify your mailing address changes?
Change.
Number 2.
Contact Industry Canada to provide details of your address change. Yep. You don't actually have to phone them anymore. You still can. I recently did, but there's a handy web portal you can sign into once you have your call sign and do all the changes in there.
Is there? There was not a time limit mentioned in the book.
No, I don't think there is a time limit, but faster the better, I guess. So, because one of the key requirements that you have, actually we'll get to it later in a couple questions, but it's the time that you have to produce the license on premises if asked.
That's 40 hours.
Yeah.
Exactly, but we'll jump into that in a bit. Right here. There we go. So the holder of an amateur radio operator certificate shall, at the request of a duly appointed radio inspector, produce the certificate or a copy thereof to the inspector within 48 hours of the request. So.
Get that wrong enough, you remember it.
Yep. What age must you be to hold an amateur radio operator certificate
There
with
are no
basic
age.
qualifications?
That's right.
There are no age limits, which is perfect because some of you might be worrying if you were too young. So we're all good there. Forced retirement in the amateur radio hobby would not be good for numbers. Which examination must be passed before amateur radio operator certificate is issued?
Basic.
Basic. Yeah, and you can't have your advanced before you have your basic. I did double check that. Why can't family members without qualifications transmit using your amateur station if they are alone with your equipment?
Because of the Act.
Which what?
Number 3.
Yes.
They must hold suitable amateur radio qualifications before they are allowed to be control operators.
That's correct.
Yep, there we go. If you're not present, then they can't claim the control. If you are present, though, you are still the controller, and you're letting them talk on it.
That's right.
Yeah. Amateur radio stations may communicate. True.
Yes.
Number 2.
Only with other amateur stations. That's correct. So we're not allowed to talk to police, planes, maritime. You only have an amateur radio certificate, so you can only talk with amateurs. The call signs of Canadian amateur radio stations would normally start with these letters.
VE.
Number 1.
VA, VE, VO, or VY.
That's right.
That's correct. Radio amateurs may use their station to transmit international communication on behalf of a third party only if
Number 2.
Number 2, such communications have been authorized by the countries concerned. That's correct. So, does Canada allow us to transmit third-party communications?
Yes.
Yes. Canada does not have a forbidden contact list anymore. At one point we did, but now if you can communicate, if the other country allows you to communicate on a third-party basis, there's nothing blocked.
Yeah,
So,
one of the questions was an unlicensed person's operating your station in your presence.
Hmm.
A third party comes along on the other end. What do you do? And the answer was you have to stop your friend or whoever from broadcast to determine whether they have rights to contact a third party in that country.
exactly. Yeah. One notable example, for example, is the States. They have a list of countries they allow, and if you're not in that country list, then you can't talk. For us, the main thing is we have to make sure that their country allows third party to us, but we automatically allow anybody who allows reciprocal. So, Yeah, it's one of those
Is
things.
there a chart on that stuff?
There isn't for Canada. That's what.
I mean, is there a... Yeah, but there are a lot of countries out there. Is there somewhere that has a list that they're allowed third party or not?
The basic way I would figure it out is the states for an easy first glance list because they have a list of countries that they allow to communicate with them for third parties.
So if they allow, we probably do too.
Exactly. That would be the first place I would check. For the most part, I would say don't trust the other person on third-party communications, but you're typically not going to be dealing in third-party communications. It's primarily first-party. So the way that breaks down, you're the first party, the other amateur is a second party, anybody else who isn't the two stations is third party. So for example, if, let's say my parents lived over in another country, and I knew a ham over there, right? If I were to say, oh, wish my family a happy birthday or whatever, that would be a third-party communication because I'm sending it to the second party for a third party. So, you typically never run into this, but you may. So, amateur third-party communications is... I guess I just kind of give that answer away.
You did. Number 3.
Transmission of non-commercial or personal messages to or on behalf of any third party.
Yep.
Again, you are the first party communicating to a second party. Anyone else is third party. International third-party amateur radio communications. In case of emergency or disaster relief, is expressly permitted unless...
I'd say number 4 too.
So it's only if specifically forbidden by the administration concerned. So makes sense, though. Again, if they are in a declared state of war, they've probably also forbidden radio communications. I would assume, but not always.
Oh yeah.
Okay, here we go. Which of the following statements is not correct? An amateur radio. Yeah, this is one of the ones. There's something in there that shouldn't have been there. Which of the following statements is not correct? A Canadian radio amateur may, on amateur frequencies, so I'll give you the correct answers and stuff.
Okay.
They can pass messages originating from or destined to the United States Military Auxiliary Radio System, MARS. They may pass messages originating from or destined to the Canadian Forces Affiliate Radio Service, CFARS. They may communicate with a similar station of a country which has not notified the International Telecommunications Union that it objects to such communications. However, the incorrect answer, the one that they're looking for, they may not pass third-party traffic with all duly licensed amateur stations in any country which is a member of the ITU. Again, if the country says no to third party, you can't do it. Yeah. All right, we're done. We're finally done. So this is we have 3 more documents we need to read, though. We need to read RIC 3, RBR 4, and the CPC 2003.
Oh, let me just do this again.
Yeah. If you Google any of these, you'll come to the Industry Canada website that will have all of them. So RIC 1 through I think 14 or something like that. These are the only ones you particularly need. A lot of them have to do with broadcasters or like cell phone operators because they're all under Industry Canada again. But these are the primary ones. If you want to, you can also read RIC 4, but it's like 2 paragraphs. It just says every 30 minutes you have to say your call sign. So that's the only other one that you might have to read.
Oh, I don't have a
Sorry,
call
what was that
sign.
again?
RIC 3, RBR 4.
No, the one you...
Oh yeah, RIC 4. You'll actually think it's kind of a joke because it's 1 page and 2 paragraphs. I don't know why they have it in a separate one, but it's...
What's radio block diagrams?